What's up, guys? It's Chad at All Dogs Off-Road, and we're going to be continuing our Xterra kind of rebuild, re-gear project today. So, in the last video that we shot, we had our rear end completely rebuilt, new carrier bearings, new wheel bearings, new axle seals, all that good stuff. Today, we're going to take that and put it in the Xterra, and then we're also going to swap out the R180 front diff that we have in there right now for a new one that was graciously provided to us by our friend Russ. So, kind of a quick recap overall. We have a basic trim Xterra behind us, our shop Xterra. It's 313 geared right now with an R180A front diff and then a C200K rear diff. We're going to be swapping an M226 with an E-locker in it, and then an R180A to the front that are 336 gear ratio. So we're going to be going a little bit deeper, which will better match the tire size that we're running right now, and should effectively turn what was a 280,000 mile Xterra into, well, brand new rear end. This front diff has I think 19,000 miles on it, and then the engine has 90k on it. So the whole drivetrain, basically, maybe with the exception of the axle shafts, will be brand new, or newish, newer than it was. So this is going to be dirty work, lots of gear oil. I already got it on me. We cracked the front diff open already just to make sure, just to triple check that we had the right ratio, and we're good there. So join us, come along. So we've gotten our wheels off, and I'm kind of planning on what we're going to do for the rear here, but I think that what my plan is going to be is to try and keep the brake system intact. So I can disconnect all of the brake and ABS lines and just push them up or zip tie them up out of the way, it looks like, and that should give me full access to disconnect the leaf springs and then drop the axle and then bring the new one in. That way we're not messing with hydraulic fluid or bleeding brakes. We'll see if that holds true or not. I'm hoping that it'll be that easy. And it seems like for the parking brake as well, just there's a couple bolts to disconnect and push up out of the way. So we'll get cracking on that and see if it works out for us. So we started digging in a little bit and disconnecting our emergency brake and brake line connections, and first thing that became apparent is we will not be able to get away with trying to not bleed the brakes. So the hydraulic hose here runs through a tab on the axle that does not have any access or opening to it. So we'll be disconnecting the hard lines here, making a little bit of a mess, and then proceed from there. the moral of that story. So we don't have the proper, what, I don't know if you call them crowfoot wrenches or whatever that you'd use for brake lines, in the shop with us right now. So I was just using a regular 10 mil. The other side came just fine. This side was quite a bit more rough looking, and I rounded it. So I used some vice grips and was able to pop it without damaging anything, but it is rounded. So we'll there we go. I think we'll still be able to use this and just be a little ghetto, but make sure you have the right tools if you do this and don't mangle stuff like we do. So we've got all of our lines free and disconnected and kind of cable managed out of the way. We have them draped over the sway bar and some other stuff up there. The next step really is just going to be getting the differential itself free, and what that's going to involve is removing your 6 bolts at your pinion yoke, and then what we're going to do, I think, is pull our forward leaf spring eye bolts and then our U-bolts, and then it should just tumble forward, and then we can just push it out of the way, and then we will repeat the process, or reverse the process with the new diff, which will be a little bit lighter and easier because we'll have the axle shafts pulled, whereas on this guy here, we're leaving the axle shafts in. So this guy will be a little bit heavier, but it should still be manageable. I found that when getting these 6 bolts on the pinion flange here, pinion yoke, usually they're Loctited or they're difficult, so it helps to have some heat. So you'll probably see me heating these up if they are stubborn. So we're going to try and do things a little bit differently now that we have just about everything disconnected. I'm going to disconnect the shocks and get them pushed out of the way and disconnect the U-bolts. And with a couple strong guys, we might be able to just hoist this out rather than disconnecting the leaf springs and then dumping it forward. So we might try that and struggle a little bit and see if that's a quick, easy way or if that's a regrettable decision. so we've got the M226 put in the Xterra right now. Our next steps will be to install the backing plates and the axle shafts, and then we'll just start buttoning everything back up. We'll put our e-brake cable brackets back into place, and then start running our hydraulic lines for the rear brakes. So we're making some good progress. I got a little greedy, guys. So I was starting to put things back together, and it was starting to connect the distribution blocks for the rear hard lines, and I didn't think, or I didn't remember that this axle had been sprayed down with Por 15, so the threads were pretty gummed up. I ran the bolt down and snapped it off. So my first attempt was to take the grinder here and try and cut a little slot with a flathead to see if I could twist it out. That did not work, so I got the welder out, welded a washer onto the top, and I was going to put a nut on top too, but just decided to spin it and see if it would come just by itself like that, and it sure did. So that's out. Got a 8mm by 1.25 tap. Cleaned out the threads, so now everything should go right back together and we can get back on track. We got the backing plate put back into place. It's not bolted in. The axle shaft has the retainer on it with 4 bolts that will clamp everything together. So it's sitting kind of loose right now. But I've got the e-brake cable put through, and the e-brake drum shoes. That's all set up and good to go. So we're going to grab our driver's side axle shaft. I had to look. We'll put it all in place and then get it all buttoned up, and then we'll check and make sure that our dust shield here doesn't scrape. This was bent up when we got it, so I had to kind of massage it back into place. So we'll get everything in and then do the brake caliper. So we got the brakes all done. We have the hydraulic lines put back together, the mechanical line for the e-brake done as well. Now we're going to be attaching our drive shaft to our pinion flange. That's 6 bolts and they're all 14 mil, and then we're going to use a little bit of Loctite on them. But from there, after that, I think that we'll reconnect the shocks, and then we can probably start on the front. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the rear all done, and we're going to move on to the front. Brakes are all done. Drive shaft is connected to the pinion yoke. We put the sway bar back on. Shocks are connected. She's basically done. All we got to do is put gear oil in the rear diff and bleed the brakes. So now we're going to move up front. We're going to pull the wheels off, pull the CVs, drop the R180, slap the new one in. We'll see if we can do that all in an hour and a half, because it's about 3:30 right now. So the front should be quite a bit less complex than the rear, because you don't have to mess with ABS or brake lines for the most part. You're gonna pull your front CV nuts, then you'll pull your CV, then it'll be 1, 2, 3 bolts, and maybe the cross member, just depending, and then it'll just drop right out. So should be pretty quick and straightforward. Your axle nut here is 32 millimeters, and then once that is off, you'll disconnect your upper ball joint, separate it, and then you should be able to have just enough room. And you probably want to loosen your ABS lines. You pull the spindle, and that should give you enough room to fish the front of the CV out, and then you'll, with the partner, pop the CV, set it aside, and rinse and repeat. Greasy. So step by step, what you do is you're going to disconnect your upper control arm, and you can let things kind of float. You just want to be really mindful of your brake lines. Make sure that you don't stretch them too much, because you can tear them. But so I got everything kind of hanging a little free, a little bit of tension on the brake line. Sometimes your CV, the splines will stick. If that's the case, I don't know, we'll see. No, mine is free, but you could, if you have to hammer it, put your axle nut on first and then hit here so you don't mar the threading. But we'll see if we can pull this out. That's greasy. There. Okay. Just hang tight for a minute. I find that a pry bar and a hammer works well to get the CV out. You just get on the edge and give it a couple tap taps. Like so, and then it's free. Not too bad. Oh, I'm gonna lose some gear oil. That's okay. Alright, so we effectively have our Xterra and two-wheel drive now. Both CVs are pulling. What we will do now, you can approach this a couple ways. An easy way that takes a little bit more time, or a longer way. We'll probably do this the easy way. But there'll be 1, 2, and 3 bolts holding your front diff in, along with a little breather hose right here that runs up to your air box. So unclip that. It'll just be like a little spring clamp. I might even be able to get it with my fingers, but then from there, I'm going to pull this cross member, and then everything should just dump right out. And then, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot your pinion yoke to drive shaft here, which is looks like 14mm bolts. And it looks like someone's been in here before. These heads are a little rounded, so we'll get to work. That's actually cleaner than I thought it would be. I was expecting a horror story. Oh no. We pulled the diff, 1, 2, 3 bolts, and we had pulled the cross member so everything would come down nice and easy. We found an oil leak on top of our diff that doesn't appear to have been from our old motor. It's coming from the new one, so we might have a leaking valve cover gasket or something that we'll diagnose later. But we've been keeping an eye on oil consumption, and we haven't been consuming any oil, so I don't think it's anything to worry about, and we'll track it down. But so diff is out, old diff is out. We'll grab the new one and we'll throw it in. Basically just reverse the process. We use our ADO cam bolts on this truck, and the forward one we had installed such that the longer part of the bolt was pointing back. It kind of made extracting the bolt outward away from the engine difficult, so we just took the cutting wheel and just lopped the bolt off, because if it ever comes out, it'll probably be cut out because it's seized up or something. I don't see a reason why we'd pull the whole control arm, and if we do, we could always just put a new bolt in. It's pretty easy to do. So we're gonna have a sip of beverage, and then we will grab the new diff, throw it in, and we're getting short on time, so I don't know if we will put fluids in it and bleed the brakes today, or whether we'll do that tomorrow. More than likely we'll do that tomorrow, and then we'll take it for a test drive and basically be done with it for a while. I think the last thing that we would have to do is wire up the e-locker, but that's just going to be some wires and a relay. We'll see if we capture that on video or not. I might hand that off to Kyle, because drivetrain and suspension's my thing. I don't do electrical. So, almost done. Let's keep going. Mike and I, with our infinite strength, effortlessly wrestled the diff into place, and now I'm reconnecting the 4 bolts for the drive shaft with some Loctite to make them as hard to take off, or hard for the next person as they were for us. We really had to get the induction heater on them and just cook them to get them out. But we'll get these tightened up, and then I'll tighten up the 3 bolts that hold the diff, and then we'll stab the CVs back in, and that's it. I got the breather hose reconnected, which is right here. But this ADO-4X is officially re-geared. It's 336 now. So we've got everything buttoned up. We torqued our ball joints up front, got the CVs in. It's basically done. What we're still going to do, we'll probably not show on camera, is we'll just put some gear oil on the front and rear diffs. We'll bleed the brakes, and then we'll eventually do a wiring harness for the locker so that we can switch it on and off in the cabin. But that's it. Our basic low trim Xterra is now an ADO-4X. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, check out our website, www.alldogsofferoad.com, and check out more videos.